Welcome to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast.
Wherever you find American troops today, you find the men of the Transportation Corps. Enough and on time. That's the story we tell you today. The story of the Army Quartermaster Corps.
These youthful servicemen are members of the Army's Military Police Corps.
One of the most important forces behind the lines, the Army Ordnance Corps.
Welcome to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast. Once again, I am Sergeant First Class Adam Ross, Public Affairs NCOIC for 19th Expeditionary Sustainment Command. And today we have a topical issue. We find ourselves in Army History Month. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means. It's a relatively new concept. And so to talk about that, we are welcoming part of our 19th ESC Military Equal Opportunity Directorate. So with us today we have Lieutenant Colonel Tom Campbell and Sergeant First Class Juan Negron. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
And so Army History Month, like I said, before we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but first of all, I want to get both of your backstory a little bit. Sir, especially with you, I think you might be the first equal opportunity officer I've ever met. So are there not that many of you, or is it a little different to get into that career path as an officer?
No, there is opportunity. The Army course in Florida went virtual and basically capped their training. So they stopped having people coming into the course, came up with a virtual curriculum, and now they just have a backlog. It's a good, just like a lot of officers do IG, MEO is a great broadening opportunity. A branch manager offered to come back to Korea too. Sure. Finishing up my first year, going into my second, and it's been a great experience thus far. What I thought about MEO and what actually happens has been the biggest eye-opening thing. There's a lot more behind-the-curtain type experiences on a weekly basis that you deal with units to mitigate issues and solve problems at the lowest level.
Okay, great. Well, we'll touch on that a little bit later for sure. And Sergeant Negron, is this your first assignment as a MEO NCO?
It is. This is my first assignment. I was actually a human resources sergeant before becoming a military equal opportunity advisor. This for us is a broadening assignment, so I'm doing 2 years. So this will be my first and last PCSing as a senior human resource sergeant. But with I became a military equal opportunity advisor. I was DA selected. I was one of the very few DA selected when I went to the class. The instructors didn't actually think I was DA selected. I have to tell them, because usually this is a volunteer assignment. You want to be an equal opportunity advisor to be successful at it. This is something that I didn't see myself doing. I was a SARC before, and once the Army told me I had to do it, I embraced it. I have no idea what was I going to find, what was I going to do, and I did learn a lot. I did grew a lot as an individual, not only as a professional, but as an individual. I got to look deep within myself and actually help others, which is something that I like doing. So I'm actually very glad that the Army gave me this opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And then, so you didn't do the virtual course. You went to Florida.
Sadly, no. I actually went to the first virtual course, which for us, it wasn't necessarily refined. So it was a lot longer than it is now. And it was more difficult because the concept wasn't there. It was basically the pilot class for the virtual course.
As a notoriously good location in Florida, right?
Yes.
But none of us have been there. Someday, maybe. Okay.
Our instructors were going virtual from their backyards, and their backyard has a view of Cape Canaveral. So,
oh wow,
it was a good.
Well, yeah, and within the PAO community, it's one of the hush-hush assignments that everyone wants. You know, that you whisper to your branch manager, like, is DOMI open? Is it okay.
Yeah.
So who knows, someday maybe. But let's focus a little bit on main reason we're here today. So it's June is Army History Month, which for those of us who have been in for a while, this seems like a relatively new concept. And can you speak on what what Army History Month is and how it's different from other concepts before.
Yes, well, the DA, Department of Army, mandates that June is Army Heritage Month.
Oh, Heritage, okay.
Yeah, and that is to recognize diversity, promote cohesiveness, and esprit de corps with the unit. It's also recognize diversity within the Army. Basically, units are delegated to come up with events, like one we'll talk about later, promoting the Army values and highlighting heritage awareness. And we have a great location just north of us.
So yeah, we do have a great location. So, and we've talked a little bit about, I think in one of our prior podcasts, we discussed it. Really, anytime I have someone from Carroll, I bring up Hill 303 because it was one of the first things I did when I got to this unit was doing that hike. So, Sergeant Negron, what are you able to do with that location to promote the history here?
So with the Hill 303 and all the history that went there, sadly, the loss of lives, the massacre site, but it also includes how soldiers got together, how people got together, fought together, brought in an environment that was, at that time, it was a very different world than what we see it today. The inclusiveness, we were segregated as a society. People weren't working together. The way that sexism and those rules that applied, that was normal at the time as a society, not only in the U.S. but in many other places around the world. They put the differences aside, and they use that diversity, the language barriers, everything that they can put together, and they use us as a strength, not as a weakness, not as separating people, but putting them together. That was key to victory. Having that diversity, that cohesion, bringing everybody together was definitely was the key to victory. We wouldn't have won, and we wouldn't have done everything that we have without it. I think that started something that we're still trying to do today. We are a reflection of society in the U.S. Army and in any of the other branches, and bringing this change of culture, bringing this out, not only for our soldiers, but for our family members, seeing a different world, being included and seeing the diversity across the world, something that most families can't see unless they are in the Army or in the military. It's a unique opportunity, and if we use it correctly, we can better ourselves and we can better society.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I know, like, what you mentioned about how people outside the Army can't really see that. That's something that I bring up a lot when I talk to civilians. Just tell them, like, if I'd been in almost any other career field, I wouldn't have an opportunity to meet several people from, like, Haiti or Nepal or Bangladesh that are all in the same team. It's just you have an opportunity to meet people from incredibly diverse backgrounds. And so, sir, where do you how do you see the hike then fulfilling the Army Heritage Month mission?
Well, Sergeant Negron brilliantly just talked about the intent of this concept that we got going on Friday. It's going to be a snapshot of the hallowed ground we're going to walk across. 72 years earlier, some of the fiercest battles in the Korean War, and ultimately changed the tide of the war, as well as a snapshot of society of the time and highlight how things were back then and how they are now. And really just it's going to be like a staff ride light. The Camp Carroll service members up there, they get to do it a lot. The intent is to get a lot of Camp Henry, Camp Walker out of their barracks and get up north there to do it for the first time. Something they normally wouldn't have known about, and see the big museum as an opportunity to follow back on and learn more about the war. But that's the overall intent. Get everybody out. We're just coming out of the COVID cloud, and definitely feel the tide is changing for getting back to the real world. And this is a great opportunity to take part of Army Heritage Month. We're also going to celebrate the Army birthday there. With the little cakes.
Oh, great.
June is a busy month. There's the Army Heritage Month, Army birthday, Flag Day, Pride Month, Juneteenth as well.
Right,
added
yeah,
as
very
well.
busy. We got the change of command at the end of the month.
Change
too.
of command, throw in Catoosa Friendship Week. June's going to burn by. So
yeah, that's. I think that's something interesting about Camp Carroll, and I said I bring it up a lot of times when we have guests from Carroll, like to be able to. I think Colonel May, who was at 6th Ordnance, he brought up like he can look out his office window and see Hill 303, where this historic battle that'll be looked back upon forever, probably. I mean, as long as we're here, and especially it's important for anyone stationed down here to experience it because the battle used to be here. I mean, the war was the perimeter was in Daegu at that point, and it's just fascinating to look at that. And I think also. Just to look at from an Army perspective, I mean, these weren't infantry soldiers who were up there; they were engineers, I think, who were defending this hill. I mean, they were, any soldier they could find, was put in that position. So, I think you've both described Army Heritage Month really well. And there's a whole, we'll put it in the show description, but there's a website also that explains that as well. But why don't we transition a little bit to more your office? So the Army Heritage Month is one thing you do, but sir, you mentioned in the beginning kind of how your eyes have been open to this career field. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Obviously, I knew about the DEOCS, the Commander's Climate Survey. What I've been eye-open to was the handling a multitude of issues at the lowest level through focus groups, through remediation, through communication. And the biggest asset that we have with the unit to support the commander is our equal opportunity leaders. Each battalion and company has a primary and alternate. We just had a graduation class a couple weeks ago, 17 fresh graduates, and we have another class coming up in July. And they are our eyes and ears in that unit. So if there's a little smoke, we can go in together collectively with the EOL, with the commander, and squash whatever issue is at hand. And that has been refreshing to see that things don't escalate. By the infrastructure that the Army put in place, we can go right in there and just squash it. So that's been the biggest thing for me, handling things at the lowest level, things you don't have to bring up to the flagpole.
Just like Colonel Campbell said, for me has been being able to take care of everything at the lowest level. So conflict will happen. As long as you put people together, conflict will happen. It's about turning that conflict into being constructive versus destructive. And the only way we can do that is through communication. A lot of the issues that we have is bad communication or misunderstandings, and being able to have a conversation with different people, being able to put them together, do a little bit of conflict management in order for them to understand the point across. Most of the time it's not negative in any type of way, but the way it was understood didn't match the intent. And that is where a lot of our conflict comes from. So being able to mitigate that and do it at the lowest level, it's probably the best thing that we do in our office, because we can squash anything out before it becomes a problem, before it has to go into a commander or to a first sergeant or a sergeant major for that matter in order to be resolved. We can do that before it even happens. We can stop it before something escalates.
And I would think keeping it at the lowest level, finding a solution there will ultimately benefit the unit's cohesion more than if it has to be, taken up to the top and adjudicated up there.
Absolutely. It does. It helps a lot, and it also helps those leaders and those soldiers to grow and understand how other people think. Not just about how they see the world, but how others see it, and how their socialization change, their diversity, where they come from, what they learn as they were growing up. And just because you put on the uniform doesn't mean that you immediately become the 7 Army values. It doesn't happen. You still have your own core values, and it's understanding that and having that just general understanding and knowledge of it, and that everybody don't think the same way, that we all are different, and that is a good thing. It's one of the things that help us overcome these issues and move forward. So it's just about them growing, not just about stopping an issue before it happens. It's about making sure that you grow and learn from others. So
learning something from the whole process, not just simply like everyone. like agree to disagree or something like that.
Correct.
And so have you seen it with the COVID restrictions going down, more in-person unit events, less teleworking? Have you seen some of these conflicts maybe change since people have been coming back to the office, or communication get better?
So I haven't really noticed any big changes personally. What we have noticed is that with people being together, actually it might be improving the morale. So it's not necessarily having complaints, not necessarily having issues, but the morale itself, being able to go into the office, actually see other people, is actually improving. So I will say that it will probably decrease, but we might go through a certain point of adjusting back to being in person, which it might create some issues later on. But as of right now, the morale seems to be improving, which is a really good thing.
And let's talk about that EOL class you mentioned. So who is eligible to take that? So in Korea,
specialist promotable and above through captain non-promotable can attend. And this is because 8th Army allowed specialist promotable to go. Normally, outside of Korea, it'll be a sergeant promotable all the way through captain non-command that's able to attend.
And so this is so they act as kind of your liaison in the unit. Do they also conduct training, or what other kind of duties do they take with them?
So they can conduct training. We use training support packages, so they have to use the training support package in order for the training to be valid. The commander must be present to validate the training. So EOLs, even though we work together, they actually work for the commander and make sure that they run the policies and enforce the policies of that commander, whether it be at the company level, the battalion level, even a detachment. We handle the brigade as the equal opportunity advisors. We handle the brigade and above elements for units, but we still communicate and we continue training with the EOLs in order to prepare them to be able to take some informal complaints. They can take informal complaints. They cannot take formal complaints. They are instructed of that. And then if they have any issues, if they have any requirements for us, like, for example, doing a command climate assessment, whether it be through a DOX, whether it be through focus groups, through individual interviews, they can help us coordinate with the commander in order for us to go in, the equal opportunity advisors, to go in and conduct that assessment for the commander. So they actually help us a lot. And there are eyes and ears on the ground, so we can talk to soldiers. We know what's going on. They're the ones that can tell us exactly what's going on the field.
And what have you seen? We recently had an IG episode we released a few weeks ago, and we talked with them about misconceptions about IG. Do you have any misconceptions or frequently asked questions about EO?
Yes, first off, we don't investigate anything. It's not our job. So when we wear these patches and we go into units, people always assume things that are not necessarily the case, and that just takes communication with the commanders, with the units, that we're doing battlefield circulation here, for your commander. We're here for him and down to the lowest soldier. We just want everybody to be treated with fairness and equality, so that unit can accomplish their mission. Clear cut. That doesn't get more, much more complicated than that. What about you, Sergeant Negron?
Yeah, so I want to touch on one of the misconceptions for the DOX. So DOX, because when participants take a DOX, they usually have to put in their information. But that information is only for statistics and to put in, like, for example, if they're asking you for rank, it's mainly to be able to separate whether either senior, junior, whether it be enlisted or officer. If it's asking for sex or gender, is because they're trying to separate how do you perceive yourself and how to allocate that. The thing is that actually no one can see that. That is machine separated. All that gets pulled through a computer, through a server, and it gets deleted immediately after. So once it's put in, the only thing that stays in record, other than just the statistics itself, just the numbers and percentages, is the actual comments for the short answer questions, the ones that you actually type and put in the comments. Everything else gets deleted, so no one will be able to see.
Yeah, like so if you're an E2, you know, you're thinking like, how many E2s are there in my unit? You know, if they see this, they'll probably know who it is. But that's not the case because they won't see it.
So at least you need 5 responses from each individual category. Like, for example, if you are in a unit that's predominantly, let's say, male, and you don't have at least 5 females to take the survey, it will not be separated by sex. It will only come in as a general statistics, general numbers, because there's not enough to separate it without putting that person from being able to be recognized based on the data, based on their answers. So you actually won't show up. So we only see percentages and numbers, and then if there is enough, then we might be able to have a breakdown, whether it be by sex, whether it be by enlisted officer, warrant officers, civilians. That's one of the reasons why they ask for that information, but nothing is stored. We don't receive anything. No one can see it. We can't even see who has not taken the survey.
Can I piggyback on the
please,
DEOX topic? It is DEOX season right now. We got a lot of new commanders coming in, a lot of new soldiers coming in, a lot of soldiers leaving. Please do not blow off that email link. That is your opportunity to make an impact to your unit. Doesn't matter if you're leaving in a couple weeks, you know, or if you have another year on the pen. That is a tool for the commander to come up with the commander's action plan, to highlight the survey highlights what's going good in the unit and what needs some work in the unit. So that is your opportunity to be a voice to your chain of command. So don't blow it off. You get a lot of emails coming in, you know, how your dental appointment was and all those. I get that. But if you're in a unit, you owe it to your chain of command. Give the new commander a fair shake. If you're not happy how things were, you know, put that out there. If you're happy for things that they're going great, put that out there. But that is your opportunity to just spend a couple minutes. They take no more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, I did mine a few weeks ago.
Sure.
Yeah, it really didn't take that long. Okay, so this episode was coming out the day of the hike. So if you're listening to this, unfortunately, you can't go on it, but definitely look for an opportunity to visit Hill 303, and then look for information about Army Heritage Month. There should be some other materials out there. There's the website you can check out in the show notes. And anything else we miss you want to touch on?
If you missed this one, we're working on making this more routine for the Camp Henry, Camp Walker specifically. We want to get family members involved. We want to get everybody up there to see the heritage and the hallowed grounds that we're so close to. So this is going to be a routine event hosted by the Mio Shop.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on the show. Sergeant Negron, Colonel Campbell, the Military Equal Opportunity Shop here at 19th ESC. And it was great to have you on. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And we'll talk to you next time right here on the Every Soldier Counts podcast.